2, 3, 4.
Hello and welcome to the NESN Soccer Show. I'm Mark with Marcus, and today we've got a lot of topics to get to, including Gigi Buffon's retirement and the Europa League Final. But first, a lot of World Cup preliminary squads have been announced in the last week, few days. June 4th is the official deadline to announce the roster, the 23-man roster. There's really no set number for how big these rosters can be. I think Argentina has 30 players on theirs, or maybe more.
35, I think.
35. So these aren't really official, but basically it gives us insight into who isn't on these rosters, so we know that they won't be on the final rosters. But we were talking about this yesterday, and I just think it's kind of weird to be pushing out these preliminary squads in like sort of such an official way. Like, why not just go up until the deadline day to officially rule anybody in or out?
Players not knowing whether they're going or staying, I think it creates a sense of anxiety within the group that can be counterproductive. And there are some teams that have just come out and said, this is our 23 for the World Cup. And they've told the standby players privately to be ready. I'm thinking Brazil, England, I think, did Germany? No, they had their preliminary squad. But Brazil and England just came out and said, this is our 23. And yeah. I think, I guess it gives them extra weeks, 2 extra weeks before June 4th. I don't know if that's exactly 2 weeks from now. But it gives them another couple weeks, 2.5 weeks to just prepare as a team and as the team that you are and will be, versus having that sense of, there is competition within the squad for a lot of these players to make the teams on preliminary squads. But, just having your final 23 maybe allows you to get to the serious work of World Cup preparation a little sooner.
I can get on board with that, where if you know what you want in the 23 you have, then there's only so much time that these guys have to train together before they're playing in extremely important matches. Every match is extremely important. But like Argentina releasing the 35-man roster, it's like, what is a fan supposed to even gather from that? It's just like,
well,
it's
I think
almost useless
that
to me.
that gets us to our next point, which is all you can really tell about these preliminary squads is some players are going home, and that's or staying home, and that's really been the big news this week, is that certain players just aren't going to the World Cup, and it's always like this guy got cut.
We've picked out a few. Which one do you think is the most surprising?
All right, we have Mario Götze, Andre Schürrle from Germany. These two guys created and scored the World Cup winning goal in 2014. Out. Joe Hart, Jack Wilshere for England. Out. Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Out. David Luiz, Dani Alves, both out. And Peru's Paulo Guerrero, which I guess we'll have to double back to that later. But among these players, there are no surprises.
Mainly injuries?
Injuries, form, age.
He retired, technically.
Götze and Schürrle, not, they haven't been playing particularly well. Schürrle, I believe, is at Wolfsburg, and that team is in a relegation playoff. I don't know how many games or goals and assists he scored. Joe Hart has been terrible for the better part of the last 2 years. Jack Wilshere played for Arsenal this year fairly regularly, but never quite. How much can you depend on a player who's been chronically injured for the last 10 years? Zlatan Ibrahimovic, I told you weeks or months ago that he wasn't going. No surprise. I guess David Luiz might be the biggest surprise. Dani Alves out through injury. David Luiz has been either in Antonio Conte's doghouse at Chelsea or injured for the last 6 months, or both. so I'm not sure. But if you want to win the World Cup, you can't take a central defender and play him,
right?
And he hasn't been playing for 6 months. That's just not.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's also just kind of, I think especially for Germany and Brazil, just kind of a testament to how deep their player pool is in their countries and the guys that they have to choose from.
Yeah.
And if, maybe if technically on paper you would have been healthy by time of the World Cup,
right?
It doesn't necessarily mean that, even if you're a little bit off your game and like not completely sharp, that's enough to make you not make the roster.
Right, and unless you are, a player that is, let's call him legendary, David Luiz would not be in that, or maybe not legendary, but let's say genuinely world class.
Right.
If it's not that player, you generally don't want to take a risk. You can,
yeah.
I don't know what the baseball term, like WAR, wins above replacement, or something like that. Yeah, the WAR differential.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it does. It also just kind of also affirms like Germany and Brazil have got to be. I mean, they're definitely the favorites. I think going in kind of neck and neck for the tournament. Not that we're gonna, tackle that question.
I'll tell you right now, neither one of those teams is winning the World Cup.
You don't think so?
Continue.
Well, they can be favorites all they want. It's not going to happen. Leaving these players off the roster, and like with all the injuries and everything, just to be able to say it, like they aren't going, is, I think, just a sign of how good they really are. But Paulo Guerrero,
yes,
you got some more on this. It's a very interesting story, to say the least.
I'm not sure if I'm ready to print up T-shirts that say "Free Paulo Guerrero," but he's Peru's captain, star striker. He's been banned by the Court of Arbitration for Sport, and over a failed drugs test. And they said he was tested positive for cocaine. Minor traces of cocaine. And I guess the story he put out, and the Court of Arbitration for Sport accepted the fact that he didn't knowingly ingest the drug, but he drank tea that was made from a pot, or that was made in a pot that was previously used to, he drank tea that was made from cocoa leaves, and the cocoa leaves formed the base of the narcotic that we know of as cocaine, and that's what he tested positive for. But I guess it's fairly common in Andean countries to drink cocoa tea as a stimulant, like coffee.
Right.
And he has been, I guess he was found culpable or negligent and should have taken measures to avoid committing an anti-doping violation.
What?
So he was originally suspended for 6 months. That would have expired before the World Cup. Now the Court of Arbitration for Sport extended it to, I believe, 18 months, and he's out of the World Cup. So the FIFPro, World Soccer's Players Union, has they want an urgent meeting.
Right.
So to get Guerrero in the World Cup. And I would like to see him in the World Cup because, this Peru team is their first time since 1982, and they need their best player.
And this article we're reading is from the Los Angeles Times, but it's such a quick thing. The last sentence of the article is the original suspension was 6 months, and now it's through 2018, and there's no sort of explanation as to why that happened.
Yeah.
And at least this, when it's presented this way, it seems like a sort of out to get you sort of move, which I don't understand why that would be the case. It doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah.
I mean, he served a 6-month suspension for something that they recognize he made a mistake, and
yes,
it's like, you made a mistake, but you should have known about it, so we're going to suspend you 6 months. Okay.
And that was FIFA's suspension.
Right. It's like, okay.
And he fought that at the Court of Arbitration for Sport, and he fought the law, and the law won.
But it seems like that 6-month suspension is almost specific so that, all right, you're going to miss your club season, but you'll be able to play the World Cup. And now it's just saying no can do.
Yeah.
And they'll fight it. And this is the sort of thing where it feels like FIFA is just going to do what they want, sort of situation.
Well, it's not FIFA; it's a different organization that's going after him.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tough on Peru.
Yeah.
His attorney said, the ruling shows anti-doping rules. So the World Anti-Doping Agency filed a brief, argued for the longer sentence that the court ended up siding with. So I guess their word was a little stronger than what his attorney wrote, which was the ruling on anti-doping rules are contradictory and disproportionate. Mm-hmm. They verified Guerrero didn't use social drugs, didn't have a goal of improving his performance. The circumstances, he said, should have led the court to let Guerrero stay on the team. Instead, they banned him. And Peru won't be as fun to watch at the World Cup.
And that's so disappointing because I'm thinking back to 2016 Copa America, Peru versus Brazil at Gillette Stadium, and being at that match and just feeling the Peru fans beforehand, during the game, they seemed like so much fun.
Yeah.
And they ended up beating Brazil in that game, which is kind of an upset of a Brazil roster that had its own issues. But it's just to just simply take away a team's best shot at making any sort of noise, maybe making it out of the group stage, just seems like a real disservice to the whole tournament in a sort of way. And it's also if Guerrero was maybe more famous, a higher profile player, you got to imagine that 6-month suspension doesn't get extended. Kind of if he's, I don't know, Messi, does his 6-month suspension get extended for reasons that we can't really figure out?
Well, it's a court process, and he lost.
Well,
that's long and short of it. That's why it's like if you plead guilty, you'll serve 6 months in jail versus if you plead innocent and are found guilty, you get life. They're
right.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it was one of those cases.
Yeah. Well, these aren't the only teams that released rosters. Yes. Mexico announced their preliminary roster. Mexico as a whole is dealing with a good number of injuries to good players.
Yeah.
And making it sort of difficult and hard to predict, what that 23-man roster is actually going to look like.
Yes, there's 28 on the preliminary roster. 6 players are, I guess, racing against time to be fit for the World Cup.
Yeah.
We have Andres Guardado, who just underwent minor surgery on, I just read the article, and I don't know what part of the body it was, and it was a very medical term. He just underwent minor surgery, said he'll be back in full training 10 to 12 days. Hector Moreno just suffered a calf injury, will miss Real Sociedad's last game of the season. LA Galaxy players Jonathan and Giovanni Dos Santos, both injured, trying to get, I think one has a hamstring and I forget what the other one is. Diego Reyes and Nestor Araujo, also injured. That's 6 out of 28. My math tells me that's almost a quarter of the team.
Yeah.
That is, that doesn't bode well for Mexico.
Makes life difficult.
Yeah, I mean, Mexico's talking about, going to the World Cup to win it. I'm not sure if you can really expect that with a quarter of your team battling some ailment or another less than a month before this thing kicks off.
And another sort of injured player that's not even on the preliminary roster for American fans is Jonathan Gonzalez. And he was let's call it a long shot.
He was always a long shot.
Yeah.
He didn't make it.
He didn't make it.
And I never really thought he would either. And I don't think him choosing Mexico was about being on the 2018 World Cup team versus not, on the United States' not 2018 World Cup team.
Right.
I think it was kind of it was a life decision for him. of where he's going to do his work. And I think Mexico it is.
The storyline that draws me in the most is Rafa Marquez, though. He's going for his 5th World Cup club with Mexico, 39 years old, kind of unreal, and he's been captain. So
been captain in 4 World Cups. He's trying to be the first player to captain 5 World Cup teams, which is incredible. And I think Lothar Matthäus and somebody else are the only, Antonio Carvajal, which would be, he's Mexican, the only players to have appeared in 5 World Cups. Mm-hmm. So this is rare company. I mean, of all the soccer players that have ever played, to do it in 5 World Cups, that's 20 years out of your career.
That's pretty nuts.
Would be incredible. Rafa Marquez, there's this mystery around him, or there has been at least, since last August, when the U.S. Treasury Department sanctioned him over links to a suspected drug kingpin, or suspected links to a drug king. He missed a few months of the season back in September, October, thereabouts, August, September, October, cleared that up, returned to his club, Atlas, and has been playing, but he hasn't played for Mexico since, and the federation really has been quiet about his status and whether he could play, can't play. His lawyer says there are no legal barriers for him to play, so it looks like Rafa Marquez is going to Russia.
And do you think there's any concerns with being 39 years old?
Yeah, he's old.
I mean,
what do you mean concerns?
Like, well, just is he a valuable member? Does he? How much value does he bring actually on the field? Or do you think maybe he brings enough value on the field that all the value he may bring in an experience and sort of having been there, done that sort of situation, you know, the amount that's going to rub off on the rest of the team is going to overvalue things that he does on the field? Does that make sense?
Yes. I don't think he would be on this list if he couldn't contribute on the field. And they talk about him playing as a midfielder, which is wild, as opposed to center back at his age.
Must be on
maybe Mexico can cover his lack of pace, and he's never really had pace, but Mexico can cover that with other players. Long story short, I think Mexico's better with Rafa Marquez in that squad than without him. He's kind of like a second coach and a second father to a lot of the players. So, yeah, I think all things being equal, he's worth taking.
Well, so Mexico has some international matches and friendlies to warm up for the World Cup. Their first World Cup match is versus Germany on June 17th.
Right.
And that's their biggest match of the group stage and going to be difficult to get a result. But they play Wales, Scotland, and Denmark.
Yeah.
Over the course of 2 weeks or so, starting on May 28th. So we'll kind of be keeping our eye on Mexico a lot, very closely as the World Cup rolls around because, well, there's a lot of Mexican soccer fans in the United States.
Because we're in it for the clicks.
But
did I say that?
They are an exciting club nonetheless, and outside of Germany, looks like they have a good shot to advance in their group. So definitely club to keep an eye on.
You know, this is Mexico's eternal quest to reach the quarterfinal. They want to play in that 5th game. I think every World Cup since, except for the 2 they hosted in 1970 and 1986, they've never gone to the quarterfinal. But they did reach it, I think, in 86 or 1970.
Yeah.
Round of 16. They always reached the round of 16 in the last, every World Cup since 1994.
Wow.
1990 they weren't in it. 1986 they hosted, reached the quarterfinal.
That's pretty nuts.
Yeah, so this is a 86 to 2018. Is that a 32-year quest they're on? And we'll see if it happens.
Well, soccer action has diminished slightly with Champions League sort of getting to the final and leagues wrapping up, but the Europa League Final was yesterday.
Yes.
Atletico Madrid defeated Marseille 3-0. They were already going to be in Champions League, but what are your biggest takeaways from this one?
That Arsenal was the second best team in the competition. They just lost to Atletico Madrid in the semis. No, Atletico Madrid, once they were knocked out of the Champions League, they instantly became my favorite to win the Europa League.
Yeah.
Because under Diego Simeone for the last 7 years, they've been playing at a level that is deep run in the Champions League level. And, you know, had they not won the Europa League, there really would have been no excuse for that. But there were some things that stuck out, like Dimitri Payet, Marseille captain, touching the Europa League trophy on the way onto the field.
You don't do that.
Yeah, that's just a big no-no. You're never supposed to touch it until you lift it. He just put his hand on it. 30 minutes into the game, takes a tackle, limps off in tears. We don't know if he's going to the World Cup. Haven't heard the extent of the injury. Antoine Griezmann scored twice. One was a really nice flowing move. That was his second goal. The first one was just a cheap giveaway from Marseille that he pounced on. And yeah, Griezmann, 27 years old, really, really good. I guess he's at the peak of his powers. And
right.
There's all this talk about him going to Barcelona. I wrote about it a few months ago. He's got a £100 million release clause, or €100 million release clause, something that Barcelona can trigger. Man United can trigger it. From what I hear, he's already decided on joining Barcelona. The rich will be getting richer, but he's a player who, you know, over the last 4 or 5 years has proven himself as absolutely world class, and I'm looking forward to seeing him in the World Cup.
Yeah. France kind of a definite contender to win. Not exactly surprised, but with Griezmann playing as well as he is.
Yeah, but they won't.
Who do you? I won't ask. So Diego,
I can sit here and tell you who will not win the World Cup. Won't be France. Won't be Brazil. Won't be Germany.
You're naming a lot of contenders at this point that you're saying aren't going to win it.
Yeah, I know.
So Diego Simeone.
Yeah.
You asked the question, how much further can he take Atletico? I guess how much further is win La Liga and win Champions League.
Yeah, he's won La Liga with Atletico a few years ago. He's moved them into a new stadium, and they didn't suffer that drop-off like West Ham level or Tottenham next season. Or, you know, they just haven't really fallen. They've sold some of their best players, and they just keep on reproducing. I don't know how much farther he takes this team. Maybe if they keep Griezmann, they might have one more run at the Champions League. But, you know, this is Simeone, I think, is 48 years old, proven himself as he's won the Europa League twice, I think, won La Liga, 2 or 3 Copa del Reys. He's in the, you know, top 5 coaches in the world. And he does it with a team that is not packed with star power, not a big budget team. I think Atletico has like the 13th biggest budget in Europe, but he keeps them punching above their weight year in and year out. And yeah, I think a lot of teams would like to have him as a manager. There are some big openings, such as Arsenal, such as Chelsea. Well, Chelsea as of 2 days from now. But I don't see him going there. I guess Inter Milan, if they ever get their finances right, he could go there. He played there. He's a guy that, you know, he has these emotional attachments to clubs that he either plays for or works at. And, you know, he's not like a hired gun per se. So, congrats to Atletico Madrid.
Yeah. And we talk about Griezmann potentially playing his last match for Atletico Madrid. Gianluigi Buffon had his really great press conference. He had like a standing ovation from the media as he exited the room, but announces that he'll be leaving Juventus after 17 years with the club. All these records, all these games, second most in Serie A. My biggest question is, he says he's going to reveal what he's going to do next. I don't know if it's just the fanboy in me, but like I just can't imagine him playing for another club. I feel like with kind of like the emotional aspect of like his game and like what he is, and some of like his most memorable moments are him singing anthems. He seems like so proud to have played for Juventus. I would just be surprised if he played for another team.
Yeah, he said wait till next week and he's going to be calm and reflect on what's next. Now, the Italian media has linked him to Real Madrid, Liverpool, PSG. I saw rumors maybe a few weeks ago or a month that Boca Juniors in Argentina wanted to offer him a contract, which I thought would be awesome. Yeah, he's a player who has, I guess, earned the right to pick his next, choose his next adventure, whatever it may be. And if and when he walks away from the game, he will do so with the respect of the entire soccer world. I saw him compared to a statesman, and I thought that was a very apt comparison. He is, 176 games for Italy, 1,050 games in all competitions, 9 Serie A titles, 5 Italian Cups, 1 UEFA Cup, 1 World Cup, and 1 glaring omission, and he never won the Champions League.
Got close.
Got close a number of times, but yeah, it's, I guess there are no fairy tales. But he is, today's announcement was that he's leaving Juventus, but he definitely didn't say anything about retiring. He said that one of the most interesting offers he had was to work with Andrea Agnelli, the Juventus president. So he could become a director, but I think he might play 1 more year somewhere. And I hope he does it in somewhere that has a rich tradition, and
right.
Boca would be great.
It would be cool to see him. I guess you kind of said it has to be someplace that's almost worthy of him.
Yeah, I don't see him playing for another Italian team. That's for sure.
No, definitely not another Italian team. He wouldn't. I don't think he would come to MLS. It would seem a little weird to go and play for like a big English club or a big Spanish club when he's just was at the biggest Italian club for all this time. It's just all,
I think he's still good enough to play at those levels.
Yeah, I think so too.
I don't know. I guess we're just gonna have to sit and wait and see what he does.
One last act.
Yeah, maybe he should get into politics.
He'd probably do very well in Italy.
Yeah.
So, ciao to Gigi Buffon. We've covered all of our topics. Just looking at the weekend, staying in the Serie A for just a minute, Lazio and Inter Milan are stuck at number 4 and number 5. 4th place gets some Champions League, and they play each other. So if Inter Milan can defeat Lazio by 3 goals or more, they will clinch their spot in Champions League and steal it from Lazio, basically. And that's kind of the biggest match of the weekend that I can see, and kind of the only one that really, I'm sure there's relegation battles in various places, but...
Oh, there's the FA Cup final, Sunday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Correction, Saturday, 12:30 p.m. Chelsea versus Man United. I expect it to be Antonio Conte's last game for Chelsea. I think that's a fairly open secret that he's on the way out. And, I guess Sunday, Lazio, Inter.
Yeah, I mean, the FA Cup final will definitely be on my radar. And other than that, we'll be awaiting Buffon's decision on the rest of his life. We'll keep our eye on more preliminary squads to be announced. And I think next week we will be diving into the Champions League final, kind of a full preview.
Yeah, that should be fun.
Yeah, definitely going to be fun. That'll do it for this week. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week.